Every house, every king, and every battle has its own truth. But there are stories older than crowns, darker than the night, and more dangerous than any blade. They were never written in books. They were whispered to fire, to the trees, and to the dead gods. And today, we dare to uncover one of them. The wind howled across the battlements of Winterfell, carrying with it the bite of another northern winter. Snow fell heavy upon the gray stones, cloaking the ancient towers in white. Beneath the crimson leaves of the heart tree, Lady Sansa Stark stood alone, her furs drawn close, her breath rising in clouds. The godswood was silent save for the whisper of snowflakes. She had grown used to silence in these past years, silence and ghosts. Word had come from the Frostfangs, a village burned, its people gone. No wildlings had been seen this far south in months, and the Night's Watch sent no ravens anymore. Sansa read the report by firelight, tracing each word with her gloved hand. The handwriting trembled. The survivor's tale spoke of shapes in the storm, of dead eyes glinting through the snow, and of a white beast howling beneath the moon. They said it was Ghost, Jon Snow's direwolf. She had not heard that name spoken aloud in months, not since the day the North had named her lady, and she had sworn to hold Winterfell as her father once had. The name stirred something old and cold in her chest, a memory of a boy who smiled rarely, who fought for what was right, who died for it. But the North had long memories, and the dead were not easily forgotten. That night, in the great hall, her bannermen gathered. Torches burned along the stone walls, and the banners of the houses of the North hung heavy above them. Manderly's merman, Serwyn's battle-axe, Hornwood's moose, all dimly lit by firelight. The men ate and drank little. Rumor had spread faster than the snowstorm. "A ghost wolf," muttered Lord Serwyn, his thick brows knitted. "The old tales rise again. You'll not find peace until you face what's stirring out there." Lord Manderly leaned forward, his pale eyes gleaming. "If Ghost lives, perhaps the boy does too. Stranger things have happened in these cursed years." Sansa met his gaze, calm as ice. "The dead stay dead, my lord. Yet, if something prowls in the North wearing stark colors, we must know what." So it was decided. A scout would ride to the Frostfangs to learn the truth. When the council was done, she called for one man, Sir Harold Reed, son of Howland Reed of Greywater Watch. He was young, quiet, and sworn to her service since the battle for Winterfell. His father had once fought beside Ned Stark and had known the truth of Jon's birth, a truth buried deep as the roots of the weirwood. "You ride at dawn," Sansa told him as the firelight flickered between them. "Find what's out there, and if it bears my brother's face, bring me word before the snow buries us all." Harold bowed low, his green-gray eyes steady. "As my lady commands." The next morning he rode out from Winterfell, his cloak snapping in the wind. A dozen men went with him, rangers hardened by frost and famine. They carried torches, food, and steel. None spoke much. In the North, men knew when silence was wiser than prayer. As the gates closed behind them, Sansa stood upon the ramparts, watching until the riders were no more than shadows swallowed by the snow. That night, she dreamed of Jon. He stood beneath the heart tree, his sword black as night, his eyes full of sorrow. The snow fell upon his shoulders, but he did not move. He said nothing, yet she felt his voice in her heart, a whisper of warning, faint as breath. Then the dream broke, and she woke in darkness, her room cold and still. In the Frostfangs, the wind screamed over jagged stone and frozen passes. Harold and his men pressed on through the storm. For 3 days, they found nothing but empty cabins and half-buried tracks. On the fourth day, they reached the ruins of the village. The houses were burned, roofs fallen in, blackened timbers jutting from drifts of snow. A charred cradle lay by the well. "Wildlings," one of the men muttered. Harold knelt by the remains of a fire pit. No bones, no blood, only silence. "No," he said softly. "Wildlings burn what they kill. These fires were for warmth. Whatever killed them came after." Then came the sound. Faint, far, a low growl beneath the wind. The men froze. Swords rasped from sheaths. Harold turned toward the ridge. There, against the white horizon, he saw it. A vast shape moving with silent grace, fur white as the snow itself. Its eyes gleamed red as dying embers. Ghost. The direwolf stood watching them, its breath steaming in the cold air. Then it turned and vanished into the trees. "Follow it," Harold shouted. They gave chase through the pines, their torches flickering. The snow grew deeper, the light dimmer. At last, they came to a clearing where a small fire burned beneath a rock ledge. A man sat beside it, cloaked in black. Harold halted. His breath caught. The man looked up. His face was pale, bearded, his eyes dark as the night sky. He rose slowly, and Ghost came to stand beside him. "Harold Reed," the man said, his voice hoarse but steady. "Tell me, does the North still remember?" Harold could not speak, for before him stood Jon Snow, the Lord Commander once slain and buried, or someone wearing his face. The fire crackled. Snow fell soundlessly, and the wind carried a whisper through the trees, a whisper that sounded almost like a promise. The North remembers. The campfire burned low beneath the rocky overhang, its smoke curling through the cold air like the last breath of a dying man. Harold Reed stood frozen at the edge of the clearing, his men behind him, their torches flickering in the bitter wind. Before him stood Jon Snow, or what seemed to be Jon Snow, with Ghost at his side, white fur gleaming like frost under moonlight. Jon looked unchanged by years or death. His cloak was torn but serviceable, the black of the night's watch still clinging to him. His face was lean, his hair tangled by the wind, and his eyes, God's, those eyes, were dark, deep, filled with memories too heavy for the living. "Jon Snow," Harold whispered, scarcely daring to believe it. "You were dead," Jon finished, his voice quiet as the snow around them. "Aye, so they told me." The words hung in the air like frost. No one moved. The men behind Harold shifted uneasily, crossing themselves in the old way. The direwolf watched them all, muscles taut, ears twitching at every sound. Jon turned his gaze to Harold. "You're Howland's son." "I am, my lord." Jon gave a small nod, as though this too was a memory long buried. "Your father saved my life once, before I was even born." His tone was flat, unreadable. "Tell me, who sits Winterfell's throne now?" "Lady Sansa Stark," Harold replied. "Your sister rules the North in your stead. The people are loyal to her." A flicker crossed Jon's face. Pain, pride, regret, all at once. "Sansa," he murmured, almost to himself. "The North endures." He stepped closer, the firelight glinting on his sword. Longclaw, the Valyrian steel blade gifted by Jeor Mormont. Its pommel, shaped like a dire wolf's head, gleamed faintly. "She sent you," Jon said. "Why?" "To learn the truth of the rumors," Harold said steadily. "To know whether a Stark ghost walks these snows. I thought it madness." Jon's mouth curved into something that might have been a smile, or something colder. "Not madness," he said softly. "Not anymore." He turned away and added another branch to the fire. Sparks leapt into the night. There are dead things stirring in the Frostfangs. Old things, not White Walkers, not anymore. Men, deserters from the Watch, murderers, thieves. They wear black, but they remember no vows. I hunt them. Alone? Not alone, Jon said. His hand rested on Ghost's head. The wildlings follow me, those who remain. They call me Snow again. Not Lord, not Commander. Just Snow. That's enough. Harold hesitated. If you live, my lord, the North must know. Lady Sansa must. She must not, Jon said sharply, eyes flashing. Not yet. The North bleeds, and the South stirs. If they know I live, the Iron Throne will send its spies. The Queen will not suffer a Stark risen from the dead. Harold frowned. But the Queen... Queen Daenerys is gone, Jon said, his voice hollow, and her dragons are gone with her. A cold silence fell over the camp. Harold felt the weight of those words, as though winter itself had leaned closer. Jon's gaze softened. Tell Sansa the North is safe. Tell her to hold Winterfell, and trust no one who speaks in whispers. There are those who wear friendly faces and bear southern coin. Harold bowed his head. As you command. Jon's voice grew quieter still. If I come south again, it will not be as her brother. It will be as the North's shadow. He turned away, drawing his cloak tighter. The conversation was over. Harold lingered, torn between duty and disbelief. The fire crackled, throwing long shadows over Jon's face. He looked like a man carved from winter itself, shaped by loss, hardened by it, but still standing. When morning came, Harold and his men set out for Winterfell. The snow fell thick, veiling the mountains. Ghost followed them for a time, padding silently through the drifts before fading back into the woods. They rode hard through the day, but by dusk, one of the men failed to return from a scouting sweep. Another vanished by the time they made camp. The third night, they heard voices in the storm. Low, human, close. Harold ordered the torches doused. Steel whispered free of sheaths. From the trees came movement, shadows slipping through the storm, black shapes against the white. Then the attack came. The deserters struck like wolves, their blades glinting in the snowlight. Harold met them head-on, his sword flashing. He felled one, parried another, but there were too many. The air filled with shouts and steel. One of his men fell screaming, another cut down before he could rise. Through the chaos, Harold saw the sigil stitched to one man's sleeve, the black of the Night's Watch, torn and faded. But beneath it, a thread of red, blood or something worse. He fought his way free, striking down a man whose eyes were pale and empty, like frozen water. Then the sound of a howl split the night, long, fierce, and near. Ghost burst from the trees, white and terrible. He tore through the deserters like a storm given form, jaws flashing, fur streaked crimson. Behind him came Jon Snow, sword in hand, eyes blazing. The deserters broke. Those who could fled into the storm, those who could not met their end beneath Longclaw. When silence fell again, the snow was red with blood. Harold, breathless and trembling, looked to Jon. You saved us. Jon wiped his blade clean. No, he said. I finished what they began. He looked out across the corpses, the falling snow catching in his hair. These men once swore an oath to guard the realms of men. Now they kill their own. That is what becomes of broken oaths. Harold met his gaze. Then let the North know their enemy. Jon shook his head. Not yet. The North remembers, but memory can be a weapon. Use it too soon, and it cuts you instead. He turned to Ghost, who stood still, watching the dark horizon. Go back to your lady, Harold Reed, tell her the North is not lost. Tell her the snows still whisper her name. And tell her this, when the last storm breaks, the wolf will return. Before Harold could answer, John pulled his hood low and vanished into the storm, Ghost following close behind. By dawn, only the wind remained. When Harold reached Winterfell days later, frost-bitten and weary, Sansa waited in the courtyard. The look in her eyes asked what her lips could not. He bowed low, his voice shaking. "My lady, I found him." And though she did not speak, a single tear traced the line of her cheek. Far to the north, beneath the endless snow, a lone figure walked through the white, his breath a ghost upon the wind, his name a prayer in the dark. The North remembers. Winterfell had known peace for too short a time. The ravens that once brought tidings of war now carried whispers of unrest, faint, uncertain, but spreading. Men in the North were slow to speak yet quick to remember, and rumor was the language of snowbound hearts. They said the White Wolf had returned. They said Jon Snow walked again. Lady Sansa Stark sat in the great hall, the old banners of her house rustling faintly above her. The hearth's firelight danced across her face, but her eyes were shadowed with thought. Harold Reed knelt before her, weary from his long ride, his face drawn and pale. "Say it again," she said quietly. Harold lifted his gaze. "I saw him, my lady. I swear it on the old gods and the new. He lives. He wears black still, a man of the Night's Watch. Though the watch itself is broken, Ghost is with him." A murmur rippled through the gathered lords. Lord Serwyn leaned forward, his beard dusted with frost. "And yet, he hides in the frost fangs? Why not come home if he lives?" "He said it was not time," Harold replied. "He hunts deserters, men who turned their cloaks. He warned that southern coin is being spent in the north, that spies move even here." The hall fell silent. Sansa's fingers tightened upon the arm of her chair. Southern coin. Spies. She thought of the ravens she had received from the Vale, from White Harbor, from lords who spoke with too much courtesy and too little heart. "The North bleeds quietly," she said at last. "And so do wolves when they are hunted." Harold bowed his head. "He bade me tell you something else, my lady, that when the last storm breaks, the wolf will return." Sansa's breath caught. For a moment, she was no lady of Winterfell, but a girl again, hiding in the crypts as snow fell on her father's grave, whispering prayers for the brother who had never truly belonged to any world. She rose slowly. "Thank you, Sir Harold. Rest now. You have done your duty." When the doors closed behind him, she turned to the lords. "None of this leaves this hall. Do you understand? The Queen's spies still fly their ravens north. If word spreads that Jon Snow lives, the South will see it as rebellion." Lord Manderley's voice was a rumble. "If Jon Snow lives, my lady, rebellion may come whether we wish it or no." Sansa met his gaze, cold and steady. "Then let it come when I am ready." That night, she went alone to the Godswood. The snow was falling thick again, soft as ash. The weirwood's red leaves hung still, its face carved and ancient. She knelt before it, the cold seeping through her furs. "Father," she whispered, "Bran, Jon, tell me what to do." The only answer was the whisper of snow. Yet as she rose to leave, she thought she heard something deeper. The faintest echo beneath the roots of Winterfell. A sound like a wolf's distant howl. Far to the north, that same howl carried through the pines. Jon Snow stood atop a ridge overlooking the frozen valley below. Ghost crouched beside him, breath rising in plumes. The world lay quiet beneath a pale moon, but not empty. Fires burned in the distance, too many to belong to wanderers. The deserters were gathering. Jon's hand rested on Longclaw's hilt. "They're moving south," he murmured. A figure stepped from the shadows behind him. A woman cloaked in furs, her hair pale as ice. "Then they've found something worth marching for." "Tormund said you'd not come," Jon said. "I go where death walks," she replied. Her eyes gleamed, clear and cold. "And you, Lord Snow, leave a trail of corpses behind you." Jon almost smiled. "Lord Snow died long ago." "Perhaps," the woman said, "but the dead have a way of rising when the world needs them." She turned her gaze to the fires below. "Those men serve a banner not seen in years, a black crow with red eyes. Do you know it?" Jon stiffened. "I've seen it carved into the trees, blood and soot. What is it?" "Vengeance," she said simply. "A brotherhood of the Watch's dead, men who claim the wall fell because of you." Jon's face hardened. "Then they'll have their chance to tell me so." The woman studied him a moment. "You still fight as though you owe the world something. You don't." "I owe them the truth," Jon said quietly. "And the North, if I can still serve it." She laughed softly, not unkindly. "You can't serve the North. You are the North." They moved at dawn, following the deserters' trail through the icy woods. When they reached the edge of the valley, they found what the men had been guarding, a black cairn of stones, built around something buried deep. Jon knelt, brushing snow from the stones. Beneath the frost, he saw runes, not of the first men, nor of any language he knew. He felt the air thrum faintly, as though something within still lived. "What is it?" the woman asked. Jon's voice was low. "Something that should have stayed dead." Before he could speak again, a horn sounded from the trees. Figures emerged from the shadows, a dozen men in tattered black, eyes hollow, blades drawn. "Snow!" their leader called, his face hidden by a hood. "You left us to die at the wall. Now the wall is gone, and death has come for you." Jon rose slowly. Longclaw came free with a whisper of steel. "Then let it come." The battle was swift and brutal. Steel rang through the frozen air. Ghost lunged among them, silent and deadly. Jon fought like the storm itself, each strike sure, each movement born of grim resolve. When the last of the deserters fell, the snow was trampled and red. The hooded leader crawled toward the cairn, blood staining the stones. "It's awake," he rasped. "It remembers you, Snow. We all remember." His hand struck the cairn, and a pulse shuddered through the air, deep and cold. Jon stepped back, heart pounding. The stones cracked. A whisper rose from beneath, not of wind, but of voices, ancient and endless. The woman seized his arm. "We must leave, now." But Jon's eyes were fixed on the breaking cairn. "No, if this is the work of the dead, it ends here." He raised Longclaw high, bringing it down upon the stones. The sword bit deep, and the world shuddered. A burst of icy wind exploded outward, hurling them both to the ground. When the storm cleared, the cairn was gone. Only a dark mark remained, burned into the snow, the shape of a wolf's head. The woman rose slowly, her eyes wide. "What have you done?" Jon sheathed his sword. His voice was steady, but his face was pale. What was needed? As they turned away, the wind carried a sound that was not their own. A low growl rising from the earth itself, distant yet near. And far to the south, in Winterfell's godswood, Sansa Stark woke from uneasy sleep. She thought she heard the same sound, faint beneath the stones of her father's castle, a growl, deep as the roots of the North. The North remembers. The snows deepened over the next fortnight, cloaking the north in silence. Winterfell stood as it had for thousands of years, strong and stubborn beneath the weight of storm and sky. The ravens flew slower now, their wings heavy with frost, and the air itself seemed to listen. Sansa Stark could not shake the feeling that the world was holding its breath. She took to walking the battlements at night, her cloak drawn close, her guards following at a distance. The stars burned cold above her, hard as chips of ice. Somewhere beyond the horizon, her brother moved through the wilderness, chasing ghosts and old oaths. She could not tell if it comforted or terrified her to know he still lived. That night, a rider came through the blizzard, half frozen, his horse near dead. When they dragged him into the hall, the firelight revealed the direwolf sigil burned into his palm, not carved, not painted, burned. "My lady," the man rasped, falling to his knees. "From last hearth, the umbers are gone." Gasps rippled through the gathered lords. Sansa stepped forward, her voice calm though her heart quickened. "Gone? Speak clearly." "They came in the night," he said. "Men in black wearing the crow's color. They burned the hall. Those who fought back vanished into the woods. Their lord was flayed and nailed to the gate." The great hall filled with a murmur of dread. Old memories stirred. The red wedding, Ramsay Bolton, the banners that once bore flayed men. The air seemed to grow colder still. "Did they bear any sigil?" she asked. The man nodded weakly. "A crow, with eyes red as fire." Sansa turned sharply. Harold Reed met her gaze, his expression grim. It was the same mark Jon had spoken of, the black crow with crimson eyes, the sign of those deserters from the Watch. "The Umbers were loyal," Lord Manderley rumbled. "This is no raid. It's an omen. The dead gods of the Wall have returned." Sansa's voice cut through the fear. "No gods, only men. Men who will answer for what they've done." She called her captains before dawn. Orders were given, ravens sent. The North would rise again, not for conquest, but to cleanse its own. Yet in her heart, she knew the bloodshed had only begun. 2 nights later, she stood once more in the Godswood. The snow had buried the paths, but she knew each step. Before the weirwood, she knelt and whispered the names of her family, her father, her mother, Bran, Arya, Rickon, Jon. "Show me what comes," she murmured. "Tell me what waits in the dark." The wind stirred, and the red leaves shivered. For an instant, she thought she saw movement, a flicker of white between the trees. A wolf's shape, tall and silent, its eyes glowing red. When she blinked, it was gone. Far north, in the wilderness of the Frostfangs, Jon Snow felt the same wind pass over him. He sat before a small fire in a hollow beneath the cliffs, Ghost resting beside him. Across from him knelt the pale-haired woman, Val, the widow of Mance Rayder, though few dared speak her name aloud now. "The North is burning," she said softly. "You feel it, don't you?" Jon stared into the flames. Aye, the Umbers were loyal to the end. They wouldn't fall easily. Val's gaze was sharp, and yet they have. Whatever wears the Watch's colors now has found strength, and something darker than men's hearts behind it. Jon looked up. "You saw what rose from the cairn. That power wasn't of this world." She shook her head. "You woke it, Snow. Whether it was your doing or your fate, I cannot say." Jon said nothing. The fire popped, and the smell of smoke clung to his cloak. At dawn they moved again, heading south toward Last Hearth. The land there was cruel. Frozen rivers, trees heavy with snow, skies pale and endless. As they rode, Jon felt the eyes of the forest upon him. Ghost kept close, fur bristling. When they reached the foothills, they found the ruin. The Hall of the Umbers stood blackened and broken. Its great gate was splintered, the iron hinges twisted by heat. Charred bones lay half buried in the drifts. Above the gate, nailed through with iron spikes, hung the sigil of the crow with red eyes. Jon dismounted, his heart heavy. "They died fighting," he murmured. "They deserved better." Val walked among the ashes. "There are no corpses." Jon frowned. "What?" She knelt, brushing snow aside. "No bodies, no dead, only burned bones. The rest, gone." A sudden growl from Ghost made Jon turn. The direwolf's eyes glowed faintly, fixed on the woods beyond the gate. The hair on his neck stood. Jon drew Longclaw. "Show yourself!" From the shadow of the trees came figures, a dozen or more, cloaked in black, faces hidden beneath hoods. At their front walked a man taller than the rest, his armor scorched, his eyes red as coals. "Jon Snow," he said, his voice rasping like wind over stone. "The Oathbreaker, the betrayer of his brothers." Jon's grip tightened on his sword. "And who are you to name me thus?" The man drew back his hood. His face was pale, scarred, one eye missing, the other burned with crimson light. "We are the Watch Reborn. The crow's eye sees through us now. The wall fell because of your weakness, and so we rise to build a new one, from the bones of the north." "The crow's eye?" Jon breathed. "Euron Greyjoy is dead." "Is he?" the man hissed. "Can a man who's looked into the abyss ever truly die?" Before Jon could answer, the air seemed to shiver. The deserters moved as one, drawing blades that gleamed faintly blue. Ghost leapt first. Steel flashed, snow flew. The clash rang through the ruins, fierce, fast, desperate. Jon fought like a man born of winter, each swing measured, each strike fatal. But there were too many, and the leader moved like a shadow, his strikes unnatural, his wounds refusing to bleed. At last, Jon drove Longclaw through the man's chest and saw, to his horror, no blood flow, only black smoke curling from the wound. The man laughed, voice echoing hollow. "You cannot kill what the gods have forgotten." Jon wrenched the sword free, backing toward Val. "Then we'll remind them." She raised her spear and thrust it into the man's throat. He fell at last, the light in his eye dimming. The others scattered, melting into the woods. When the wind settled, only the two of them remained. Jon knelt beside the corpse. The air around it was colder than before, unnaturally so. He touched the blackened flesh, then drew back quickly. "Fire won't burn him long," Val said. "Whatever magic binds these men, it runs deeper than the north." Jon looked toward the horizon, where the faintest smoke curled into the sky, the direction of Winterfell. "She's not safe," he whispered. Val nodded grimly. "Then we ride south." As they mounted their horses, the first flakes of new snow began to fall, soft and soundless. The ruins of Last Hearth vanished behind them, like a memory fading in the storm. And far away, within the walls of Winterfell, Sansa Stark stood by her window, watching the same snow descend. For a heartbeat, she thought she saw movement beyond the courtyard, a white wolf standing still in the falling flakes. But when she blinked, it was gone, leaving only tracks that led toward the Godswood. The wind rose, cold and sharp, whispering through the stones. The north remembers. The snows came harder with each passing day. The roads vanished beneath white. The rivers froze solid, and the winds howled through Winterfell's towers like ghosts seeking rest. Sansa Stark stood before the hearth in her solar, staring into the flames as though they could tell her what waited beyond the storm. Harold Reed stood beside her, his hands clasped behind his back, his face drawn with worry. "There is more, my lady," he said. "The scouts I sent east toward the Dreadfort have not returned. The fires we saw on the horizon are spreading. Villages burned, storehouses plundered. Someone marches under that crow banner still. Sansa's expression hardened. And no word from White Harbor? None. The ports are frozen. Lord Manderley keeps his men behind his walls. She nodded slowly. Good. Let him keep them there until I send for him. The North must not move in panic. Fear is the enemy's first victory. Harold hesitated. If this is the work of the deserters, they have more strength than Jon Snow believed. If he yet lives, he does, Sansa said firmly. I would feel it if he did not. She turned away from the fire, drawing her cloak close. Summon Lord Serwyn, Lady Dustin, and every bannerman within a week's ride. We hold council before the moon turns. If war has come again to the north, then Winterfell will answer as it always has, with fire and steel. Outside, the snow fell like ash. Far to the north, Jon Snow and Val rode through the frozen wilderness, the direwolf ghost pacing silently beside them. The sky above was a pale gray, the air sharp as knives. They rode without speaking for a time. There was nothing to say that the wind did not already whisper. At last, Val spoke. You fight too hard against death, she said quietly. Men who rise from it should not tempt it again. Jon's voice was low. I didn't rise for myself. Then for what? He hesitated, his eyes on the horizon. For her, for the North, for all that's left worth saving. Val studied him, her expression unreadable. You still believe you can save it? Jon did not answer. His gaze had gone distant, toward a shadow that lay ahead, the faint outline of the Dreadfort's ruined towers. When they reached it at dusk, the air stank of smoke and blood. The castle's walls were scorched, its gates shattered. Crows circled above in black clouds. Inside, the courtyard was strewn with bodies, flayed, as in the days of the Boltons. Val drew her spear, her face pale. This is not the work of deserters alone. Jon crouched beside one of the corpses. The man wore black, the rags of a watchman's cloak. But upon his chest was branded the same crow sigil, its eyes painted red with blood. They serve something older than vengeance, Jon murmured. He rose and turned toward the keep. We'll find answers inside. They crossed the courtyard in silence. The doors to the great hall hung open, creaking in the wind. Inside, a fire still burned in the hearth. Strange, for no living soul remained. Shadows danced across the stone walls. Upon the high seat, where once Roose Bolton had ruled in quiet terror, sat a figure cloaked in black. His face was hidden, but the glint of steel showed where a crown might have been. Jon Snow, the man said, his voice echoing hollowly through the hall. At last, the North's ghost returns. Jon raised Longclaw. Name yourself. The man stood. His voice deepened, carrying a cruel mirth. Once I was nothing. A crow among thousands. I served the watch until it fell. When the wall broke, I saw what slept beneath the ice. I heard its voice. Jon's grip tightened. Whose voice? The man lifted his head, and the hood fell back. His eyes gleamed red as embers. The crow's eye, the one who looked beyond the world. He showed me what lies after life, and gave it back to me. Euron Greyjoy, Jon whispered. His spirit, his madness, call it what you will, the man said, spreading his arms. The sea gave him power, but the cold gave him eternity. He speaks through the dead now. He commands us. We are his flock, and you, Lord Snow, are his offering. Jon stepped forward. You wear a dead man's faith. The crow's eye was no god. The man laughed, a sound that was not human. Perhaps, but he learned the god's secret, that they are made from memory and blood, and your blood, Snow, will make him flesh again. The fire flared suddenly, burning blue. The air grew thick with heat and the stench of salt. Val cried out, drawing her spear. Jon swung Longclaw. The blade struck the man's chest, but he did not fall. Instead, shadows poured from the wound, coiling around the hall like smoke. Faces flickered within, men of the watch, wildlings, even Bolton's long dead. Their whispers filled the air, chanting in tongues long forgotten. "Jon!" Val shouted. "The fire!" Jon seized a torch from the wall and hurled it at the hearth. Flames roared higher, devouring the shadows. The man screamed, his form twisting, melting like wax. Ghost leapt, teeth bared, dragging the figure to the ground. Jon drove Longclaw through his heart, and this time the body burned, not with fire, but with light. When it was done, only ash remained. The whispers faded. Val stood beside him, breathing hard. If that was the Crow's Eye's servant, then what he serves is no man's power. Jon stared into the dying fire. Whatever it is, it's reaching south. If it's after blood, it will seek Winterfell next. Val touched his arm. Then we ride there, but you cannot face this alone. He looked at her, and for the first time there was something like doubt in his eyes. Sansa doesn't know what's coming. Then tell her, she said, before the storm breaks for good. 3 nights later, the gates of Winterfell opened beneath a white dawn. The riders who entered were weary, their horses near collapse. Sansa descended the steps to meet them, her breath rising in the cold. And there he was, cloaked in black, his face worn but unmistakable. Jon Snow. He dismounted slowly. For a heartbeat, neither spoke. Then Sansa stepped forward and embraced him. The warmth of him, the weight of him, felt like waking from a long, dark dream. When she drew back, her eyes were bright. "You should have come sooner." "I came as fast as I could," Jon said. "The North is in danger, more than you know." Behind him, Val bowed her head slightly, her gaze sharp and wary. Sansa looked from one to the other. "Then come inside. You'll speak before the council." As they entered the hall, the torches flared as though stirred by unseen wind. Jon felt it again, that same cold presence he had felt in the Dreadfort, distant but watching. He looked toward the heart of Winterfell, toward the Godswood beyond the walls. The wind there seemed to whisper something only he could hear, a promise or a warning. The great hall of Winterfell had not held such silence since the day the king in the north fell. Lords and ladies filled the benches, cloaked in furs, their eyes fixed upon the man who stood before the hearth. Jon Snow, once Lord Commander of the Night's Watch, stood once more in his father's hall. But the warmth of home felt distant and strange, as if he were a ghost in another man's life. Sansa sat upon the high seat, her hair bound in the northern style, her face calm though her hands were tight upon the armrests. "Tell them," she said softly. Jon nodded. "The deserters who burned last hearth, who wear the black crow and the red eyes, they are not men alone. They are bound by something darker, something that speaks through them. I faced it in the Dreadfort ruins. It calls itself the Crow's Eye." A murmur rippled through the lords. Lord Manderley leaned forward, his great belly straining against his belt. "Euron Greyjoy," he rumbled. "He was slain years ago, drowned, burned, and fed to the sea. How could he live?" "He does not live," Jon replied. "He endures. His spirit was drawn north with the breaking of the wall. I do not know how, nor what force drives him now, but I have seen its mark. It feeds on blood, fear, and memory. It calls itself a god." Lord Serwyn's brows knitted. "And what does this god want with the North?" Jon's eyes found Sansa's. "It wants Winterfell, the heart of the old gods. If it can take the weirwood here, It will have a voice in every tree from the wall to White Harbor. The hall grew colder, though the fires burned bright. Sansa felt the chill seep into her bones. "Then we will burn it out," she said firmly. "We've faced worse and lived." Jon shook his head. "You cannot burn what is not flesh. It's not just soldiers we fight now. It's memories given form. The men who follow the Crow banner believe they fight for vengeance, but they are puppets. Each battle they win feeds the thing that commands them." Harold Reed stepped forward. "Then what must we do?" Jon hesitated. "I'll face it, alone, if I must. It was my oath, my command that led those men to the wall. Their deaths are mine to answer for." Sansa's voice rose, sharp with anger. "You'll not throw yourself into another grave, Jon Snow. I won't lose another brother to ghosts." He met her eyes, weary but resolute. "I died once already, Sansa. Death is not what I fear." The hall fell to whispers again. Some looked upon him with awe, others with unease. The tales of his resurrection had spread, half believed, half dreaded. At last, Lord Manderley spoke. "If this evil means to take the Heart Tree, then Winterfell must stand as it did in the old wars. We fight for the living." The lords rose, one by one, voices joining in assent. Yet Sansa's gaze lingered on her brother, on the shadow that clung to him like frost. When the council ended, she found him in the Godswood. Snow fell softly through the red leaves, blanketing the ground. Jon knelt before the weirwood, his head bowed. Ghost lay beside him, silent as the roots. "You came home only to leave again," she said. Jon did not look up. "Home is not what it was. Nothing ever is," Sansa murmured. She came to stand beside him, her breath misting in the cold. "You think this thing can be stopped?" "It must be," Jon said. "If it reaches the tree, if it speaks through the old gods, it will twist the north against itself. The dead will rise again, not from graves, but from memory. The north will eat its own heart." Sansa shivered, not from cold. "Then you won't face it alone. I won't allow it." He looked at her then, eyes dark and filled with the same sadness she had known as a girl, that endless weight of duty, heavier than armor. "You're your mother's daughter," he said softly. "But this is not a war of walls or swords. It's a war of shadows." "Then we'll light torches," she said. "As many as it takes." A faint smile touched his lips, brief as the flicker of a dying flame. "You sound like him." "Who?" "Father." She looked away, blinking back the tears that came unbidden. "Then perhaps he left more of himself behind than I thought." Jon rose. "I'll need a small company, men who will ride without question. I'll take them to the ruins of the Dreadfort. That's where it began. If there's any way to cut the thing's hold, it'll be there." Sansa nodded slowly. "You'll have them, but you'll take my raven too. You send word, Jon. Promise me." He did not promise. Instead, he placed a hand on her shoulder, the same gesture their father had used when words failed him. That night, the snows thickened. The walls groaned beneath their weight, and the sky burned with cold stars. In her chamber, Sansa could not sleep. She dreamed of the weirwood, of its red leaves dripping blood, its face twisting in pain. Beneath its roots, she saw shadows crawling like worms, whispering in voices she almost knew. She woke before dawn, her heart racing. Jon was already gone. They rode east, 6 riders and 1 direwolf. Harold Reed went with him, silent as his father's shadow. Val rode at Jon's side, her white hair bright against the dark furs. The world around them was empty. No birds, no life, only snow and the echo of the wind. By the second day, they found the first sign, a stone pillar half buried in frost, carved with the mark of the crow with red eyes. Beneath it, black feathers scattered across the snow, feathers that shimmered faintly as though wet with oil. "Do you feel that?" Val whispered. Jon nodded. The air trembled faintly as if the land itself breathed. They pressed on. By dusk, they saw the fires. A camp sprawled across the valley below, dozens of tents, banners of the crow sigil flapping in the wind. The deserters moved among them like wraiths, faces hidden, weapons gleaming blue. Jon studied the camp from the ridge. "Too many to face outright?" Harold frowned. "Then how do we strike?" Jon's eyes narrowed. "We don't. Not yet. There's something they guard, something in the heart of their camp. That's what we're after." When night fell, they moved. Through the shadows they crept, ghost padding ahead like a spirit. The wind masked their steps. The campfires hissed and spat, their glow reflecting off the snow. At the center of the camp stood a circle of black stone, freshly built, carved with runes that pulsed faintly red. Jon felt the pull of it before he saw it fully, a heartbeat that was not his own. Within the circle, the snow melted, revealing dark water. Something beneath the surface stirred, vast and slow. "What is it?" Harold whispered. Jon's answer came as a whisper, barely his own. "A gate." Then the water rippled, and a voice rose from it, deep, mocking, familiar. "Did you think death was the end, bastard of Winterfell?" Jon froze. The voice was Euron's, but deeper, twisted by echo and shadow. The water's surface shimmered, shaping itself into the face of the crow's eye, smiling, one eye bright with madness. "Come closer," it purred. "Your blood opened the wall. Let it open the world." Jon raised Longclaw, but his hands trembled. The air itself seemed to resist him, thick as oil. Val seized his arm. "Jon, it's drawing you in." He tore free, forcing himself to move. With a cry, he plunged Longclaw into the heart of the circle. Light burst outward, blinding white, burning through snow and shadow alike. The camp erupted into chaos, screams, fire, and the howls of men not truly alive. When the light faded, the stones were shattered, the water frozen solid once more. The deserters lay still, their eyes blank. Jon fell to his knees, breath ragged. Val knelt beside him. "It's done," she said softly, but Jon's gaze was distant. "No," he whispered, "it's begun." And far away, in the godswood of Winterfell, the weirwood tree shuddered, its red leaves trembling as a single drop of dark sap fell to the snow, warm as blood. Winterfell had grown restless. The ravens that Sansa sent toward the wall did not return, and the cold seemed to deepen with each dawn. The servants whispered of strange sounds from the godswood, a low hum beneath the earth, faint but unending. Even the hounds refused to go near the heart tree. Sansa sat in her solar by candlelight, reading Jon's last letter for the 10th time. The parchment was smudged by frost and soot, the words written in his hard, steady hand. "If I do not return, burn the heart tree. It is our only chance." She could not bring herself to obey. When she closed her eyes, she saw him, her brother as he had been in youth, sword at his hip, eyes shadowed but full of hope. The thought of destroying the godswood, their father's sacred place, tore at something inside her. And yet the snow whispered still, and the castle's stones felt colder by the day. A knock came at her door. Harold Reed entered, his cloak heavy with frost. "The men grow uneasy, my lady," he said quietly. "Some have seen figures beyond the walls at night. They say they wear black cloaks, but their feet leave no tracks." Sansa looked up sharply. "And do you believe it?" "I believe the wind carries more than snow," he said. She rose, her face pale in the candlelight. "Ready the guards. Double the watch. I want torches lit along every wall. If shadows walk tonight, let them see the fire of Winterfell." Harold bowed and turned to go, but she caught his arm. "When you last rode with Jon, did you see it? This power he spoke of?" He hesitated. "I saw men die without bleeding. I saw the snow burn blue, and I saw your brother drive a sword into the earth and live when no man should have." Sansa's hand fell away. "Then the gods are listening," she whispered. That night, Winterfell burned with light. Torches blazed along the ramparts, and braziers glowed in the courtyards. Yet still the shadows crept at the edges of sight, long and cold, like ink spilling across the snow. At midnight, a horn sounded. The call echoed through the keep, deep and mournful. Sansa ran to the battlements, her cloak billowing behind her. The guards pointed to the outer gate. Beyond it, through the falling snow, figures moved, a dozen, perhaps more, cloaked in black. They came slowly, unhurried, their faces hidden. "Archers," Sansa commanded. "Hold until I give the word." The figures stopped within bowshot. One stepped forward and lifted his head. His face was pale as bone, his eyes red as dying coals. "Winterfell," he called, his voice rough as gravel. "We come in peace." Sansa's heart tightened. The voice was wrong, but the face was not. It was Jon Snow. She leaned over the parapet, her breath catching. "Jon?" The figure smiled faintly. "You did not burn the tree, sister. I knew you would not." Harold Reed appeared beside her, his hand already on his sword. "My lady," he murmured, "that is not him." Sansa's throat went dry. The thing below raised its arms. The others behind it spread apart, forming a circle in the snow. Their shadows stretched unnaturally long, bending toward the godswood. A deep tremor passed through the ground. "The heart tree," Sansa breathed. The false Jon looked up at her, and his smile widened. "He thought he could stop it," it said, "but the roots of the old gods run deep, and through them I will rise." "Loose!" Sansa cried. A hail of arrows flew from the walls. They struck true, but where they hit, they passed through as though through mist. The figures dissolved into black smoke, curling upward and vanishing. Then came the sound, a deep groan, like ice breaking far below the earth. From the godswood rose a pale light, faint at first, then blinding. The snow turned silver, the air filled with whispers. The torches along the walls flickered and died. "Get everyone inside," Sansa shouted. "Seal the gates." But even as the guards moved, a scream rose from the yard below. The earth split, spilling darkness like liquid. From it crawled shapes, twisted, human-like, their faces half-remembered. Men who had died in Winterfell's service, their eyes now empty and cold. Harold drew his sword. "The dead walk again." "No," Sansa said, her voice trembling. "Not the dead, the remembered." She turned toward the keep. "To the heart tree. Now!" They raced through the courtyard, past the writhing forms clawing their way from the snow. The air was thick with whispers, voices of the past, calling her name, her father's, her brother's. Some pleaded, others cursed. At the godswood's gate, she stopped. The weirwood glowed faintly red, its face alive with tears of sap. The ground around it pulsed like a heartbeat. "Jon warned me," she murmured, "but I didn't listen." Harold seized her arm. "We must destroy it." Before she could answer, a figure stepped from the shadows behind the tree. Tall, cloaked, its features hidden. The light of the weirwood gleamed upon the steel of his sword. Longclaw. "Sansa," the figure said. "Step back." Her heart leapt. "Jon?" He came into view, weary, scarred, but living. His eyes were his own, gray and fierce. Ghost padded beside him, fur matted with snow and blood. "You shouldn't have waited," he said. "Then help me end it," she replied. Jon turned toward the heart tree. The light pulsed stronger now, the face upon the bark seeming to twist and shift, the eyes deepening, the mouth widening into a silent scream. He raised Longclaw high. "You fed on memory," he said. "You'll find none worth keeping here." The blade struck deep. A sound like thunder split the night. The weirwood flared with crimson light, then shattered, its roots tearing free of the earth. Wind howled through the godswood, carrying the scent of blood and sap. Sansa fell to her knees, shielding her face. Harold dragged her back as the ground shook. When the storm passed, only ashes remained. The weirwood's trunk was blackened, its face burned away. The air hung still and silent. Jon stood among the ruins, Longclaw buried in the earth. His breath came in ragged gasps. "It's done," Harold said softly. Jon shook his head. "No, I only severed the hand. The heart still beats somewhere north." He looked to Sansa. "I have to finish it." She rose unsteadily, her face streaked with tears and soot. "You'll die if you go back there." "Then I'll die as I should have," he said, "as a Stark." Ghost pressed against his leg, and for a moment, something like peace passed across Jon's face. He turned once more to his sister. "Keep the North safe. Whatever comes next, remember, it's not over." Then he mounted his horse and rode into the storm, the snow swallowing him whole. Sansa stood long after he vanished, the ashes of the weirwood falling like gray snow around her. In the silence, she thought she heard a whisper, faint, yet clear as a vow. The dawn that followed was colorless, a pale ghost of morning that cast no warmth over Winterfell. The godswood lay in ruin, its sacred heart tree reduced to ash. The snow that fell upon the blackened roots hissed faintly, as though even the cold itself feared to touch what remained. Lady Sansa Stark stood among the ruins, the furs about her shoulders heavy with frost and sorrow. Her people had buried the dead, those who had fallen when the shadows rose. But there were too many names, and too few tears left to shed. The castle still stood, its walls strong, its banners unburnt. But Winterfell felt hollow. Even the ravens were silent. Harold Reed joined her in the godswood, his cloak marked with soot and blood. "The fires are out," he said. "The last of the whites, or memories, or whatever they were, have vanished. The men say the earth swallowed them whole." Sansa did not look up. Her gaze lingered on the patch of scorched ground where the weirwood had stood for thousands of years. "And Jon?" "Gone," Harold said quietly. "He rode before dawn. No man could follow him in that storm." She nodded once, her face unreadable. "He'll go north." "Aye," said Harold. "He means to find what heart still beats beneath the snow." Sansa drew a slow breath, the air sharp in her lungs. "Then the north must hold until he returns." Harold hesitated. "If he returns." She turned to him at that, her eyes glinting like ice. "He will. The north does not forget its own." He bowed, saying nothing more. That evening, as the snow thickened and the wind rose to a mournful howl, the Lady of Winterfell gathered her bannermen in the great hall. The walls echoed with the sound of crackling fire and weary hearts. "The godswood is gone," she told them, her voice carrying through the hall. "What we lost cannot be restored. But Winterfell is not its trees, nor its stones. It is us. The north endures because we remember." Lord Manderley rose heavily from his seat. "And if the shadows return, then we'll meet them with steel and fire," Sansa said. "Jon Snow fights for us beyond the wall. We will not falter while he bleeds for the north." There were murmurs of assent, grim and quiet, but resolute. The northern spirit was like the land itself, harsh, cold, and unyielding. When the council dispersed, Sansa lingered by the fire, staring into the flames. She remembered her father's words, spoken long ago. The lone wolf dies, but the pack survives. She wondered if there were any wolves left. North of the wall, the world was endless white. The wind roared like an ancient beast, and the snow stung the eyes until all direction was lost. Jon Snow rode through it as one already half a shadow, ghost at his side, silent and tireless. For days he rode, seeing no sun, no stars. The frozen rivers and dead forests stretched on without end. Only when he reached the cliffs above the shivering sea did he stop. Below him, black water moved sluggishly beneath sheets of ice. The sea was restless, as though something vast turned in its depths. He built a small fire in the lee of the rocks. The flames hissed and sputtered in the wind. He warmed his hands, staring into them as if they held the answers the gods denied him. Val had stayed behind at Winterfell, though she had wished to come. "The living need you more than I do," he had told her. He did not know if that had been mercy or cowardice. Ghost stirred beside him, ears pricking. The wind shifted, and then he heard it. A low, rhythmic sound, like chanting carried from afar. Jon rose. The sound came from beyond the cliffs, from the sea itself. He followed it down the winding path, the rocks slick beneath his boots. At the base of the cliffs, the ice had cracked, revealing a cavern half swallowed by the sea. Within, a faint red glow pulsed like a heartbeat. Jon drew Longclaw. The sword's dark blade caught the light, flickering like a living thing. He entered the cave. The walls were carved with strange runes, spirals of black stone that twisted upon themselves. In the center stood a figure, or what had once been a man, frozen in ice up to his chest. His face was half hidden beneath a crown of coral and bone, his single eye gleaming red. Euron Greyjoy smiled. "So the wolf comes to the sea," he said, voice muffled by the ice. "Tell me, bastard, did you think you could kill a dream?" Jon's heart pounded. "You're dead." "Death is a doorway," Euron murmured. "And I opened it. I drowned and rose again, and the deep remembered me." He strained against the ice, and cracks spidered through it. The sea is memory snow. The snow, the ice, the trees, all remember. And through memory, I live. Jon lifted Longclaw. "Then I'll make the world forget you." He swung the blade. The ice shattered, shards flying like glass. The cavern filled with a scream that was not a man's. The red light flared, searing Jon's eyes. When it faded, Euron's body was gone. Only the echo of his laughter remained, rolling through the cave like distant thunder. Jon staggered to the entrance, gasping for air. The sea boiled below, black waves crashing against the rocks. Ghost snarled, his fur bristling. From the water rose shadows, tall, shifting, formless. They moved with the rhythm of the tide, each wave bringing them closer. Jon stood his ground, sword ready. The shadows circled him, whispering in tongues that were neither of man nor god. "You can't fight the sea," a voice said, Euron's voice, carried on the wind. "You can only drown." Jon drove Longclaw into the ground, shouting a wordless defiance. The blade flared with pale light, the same light that once burned in dragonfire. The shadows recoiled, their forms dissolving into mist. When the last of them vanished, Jon fell to one knee, exhausted. The wind eased, the sea stilled. For a long time, there was only silence. Then, faint and far, A wolf's howl rose through the storm. Ghost lifted his head, answering it. Jon looked northward, beyond the ice, beyond the horizon. Somewhere out there, he knew, the heart of the darkness still beat. The crow's eye had been banished, not destroyed. He stood, wiping blood from his brow. "Come," he said to Ghost. "There's work yet." They rode north once more, into the white void where no man should go. In Winterfell, Sansa dreamed. She saw the heart tree whole again, red leaves whispering in the wind. Her mother stood beneath it, smiling faintly. Her father was beside her, sword in hand. "Winter comes," Catelyn Stark said. "It always does," Sansa whispered. Then the vision darkened. The weirwood's face bled anew, its tears falling like rain. Beneath its roots she saw a river of black water, and in it drifted a crown of coral and bone. She woke with a cry, the dawn just breaking over the snow. Outside, the wind carried a sound she could not mistake, the distant echo of a horn, long and low. The north was calling, and far beyond the wall, in the endless white, a lone rider pressed onward, his cloak snapping in the storm, his direwolf beside him, two shadows against eternity. The wind beyond the wall was sharper than any blade forged by men. It cut through fur and flesh alike, a living thing that moaned over the endless white. Jon Snow pressed onward through the storm, Ghost padding silently at his side, the direwolf's fur a faint shimmer in the gloom. The world had narrowed to snow and breath, and the distant rumble of thunder that came from beneath the ice itself. It was not lightning that stirred the sky, nor the voice of gods. It was something older. They had crossed what was once the haunted forest, though no trees remained now, only the pale bones of trunks blackened by frost. The ground cracked beneath their steps, hollow as if the land itself had been hollowed out. Jon stopped beside a broken ridge. There, half buried beneath layers of snow, rose a ruin of stone, the remains of an old Night's Watch outpost, its tower leaning like a drunkard in the wind. The gate still bore the mark of the watch, a black crow with its wings spread. Yet beneath it, carved crudely into the wood, was a new symbol, the eye of Euron Greyjoy, ringed in jagged spirals. Jon dismounted and drew Longclaw. The sword's steel gleamed faintly in the stormlight. "He's been here," he murmured. Ghost sniffed the ground and gave a low growl. The scent was wrong, salt and rot, as though the sea had walked this far inland. They moved through the ruins, cautious and silent. Snow filled the tower, piled high where the roof had fallen. Jon brushed frost from a fallen table and found the remains of a book beneath, its pages frozen stiff. The script was old, the ink faded, but he knew the tongue. The words were those of the first men. "When the heart of the north bleeds, the drowned shall rise. From memory, a god reborn." Jon closed the book, his hand trembling slightly. He had come north to end this, yet everywhere he went, it seemed to grow stronger, not weaker. The crow's eye was dead, yet his echo carried on the wind, whispering through the bones of the earth. A sound rose then, faint, melodic, wrong. It was the sound of a horn, deep and distant, blowing once, twice, thrice. The horn of winter. Jon froze. "No," he whispered. "That can't be." But it was. The air itself shook with its call, the ground trembling beneath his boots. The ice far to the north cracked like thunder, and the snow rose in whirling spirals. He ran. Out beyond the ruins, the horizon had changed. Where once there had been only white, now a black line split the world, something vast moving beneath the ice. Ghost barked, his hackles raised. Then came the voice, carried on the storm. "You broke the wall, Jon Snow. You opened the door. Did you think I would not step through? Jon turned slowly. The snow behind him shimmered, twisting into a shape that was not quite a man. The outline of armor, a smile carved from shadow, and a single red eye burning like a coal. Euron, Jon said, his voice steady. The shape bowed slightly. The crow's eye is dead. I am what came after. What do you want? Everything, the shadow said. You mortals cling to names, to houses, to memories. You feed your gods with them. I am the feast that comes after. Jon lifted Longclaw. Then feed on me. The figure laughed, a sound like a breaking wave. You have already fed me, Snow. Every memory of you, every tale of the White Wolf, every whisper of your name. The North remembers, does it not? And so do I. The shadow surged forward, the storm itself wrapping around it. Jon met it head-on, Longclaw flashing. Steel met darkness with a hiss like boiling water. The impact threw him back, his breath torn from his lungs. Ghost leapt, jaws closing around nothing. The shadow reformed behind him, striking again. Jon barely parried in time, the force of it driving him to his knees. You cannot kill memory, the voice whispered close to his ear. You can only join it. Jon spat blood into the snow. Then I'll drag you down with me. He drove Longclaw into the ground, both hands gripping the hilt. The sword's edge glowed white, a light that cut through the storm. The snow around him melted, revealing dark stone beneath, ancient, carved with runes of the first men. The light spread through them, burning brighter and brighter until the shadow screamed. The storm exploded outward. When the wind cleared, the shape was gone. Jon lay still for a long moment, the breath rasping in his chest. Ghost nudged him, whining softly. I'm still here, Jon said, his voice hoarse. Still here. He rose unsteadily. The ruin behind him was gone, swallowed by snow. Only the black mark of the eye remained, carved into the ice where he had stood. The horn of winter had fallen silent, but in the distance, the ice still cracked. Something vast was stirring beneath. Jon looked north again. One more step, he told Ghost. One more. At Winterfell, Sansa watched the snow fall through the window of her solar. It was thicker now, heavier. The storm had not eased since Jon's departure. Harold Reed entered quietly. There's word from the east, he said. A village near the Dreadfort has vanished, not burned, gone, as though it never was. Sansa turned from the window. Send riders to Manderley. Tell him to seal his gates and prepare his ships. If the sea brings us death, we'll face it with fire. Harold nodded. And if Jon does not return? He will, she said, though her voice trembled. He has to. That night, she dreamt again. She stood upon a frozen shore, the sea before her black and endless. Across it came a single boat, pale as bone. In it stood Jon, his cloak torn, his sword gone. His face was calm. Sansa, he said, his voice carried by the wind. I found it. What did you find? She asked. The heart, he said. It beats beneath the sea. She reached for him, but the water surged between them, swallowing his voice. When she woke, her pillow was wet with tears. Beyond the wall, the storm had quieted. The air was still, the sky a strange blue-white. Jon stood at the edge of the world, where the land ended and the frozen sea began. There before him, the ice split open like a wound. From its depths rose a faint glow, red and pulsing, steady as a heartbeat. Jon stepped closer, Ghost pacing beside him. The glow brightened, shaping itself into a door of light, its frame carved from black ice. Within it swirled faces, voices, memories. His father, his brothers, Ygritte, Daenerys, all the ghosts he had carried. He understood then. The heart of the North was not stone or snow. It was memory itself, every grief, every story, every love. The thing that hunted him fed on that, twisting it, making gods of pain. He placed his hand on Longclaw's hilt, feeling the warmth of living steel. No more. He thrust the sword into the light. There was no sound, only a great silence that rolled across the world. The glow faded, the door closed. When it was done, the sea was still again. Jon stood at its edge, the snow settling quietly around him. Ghost pressed close, whining softly. Jon knelt, resting his hand on the direwolf's head. "It's over," he whispered. "Or it will be." He turned back toward the south. Somewhere beyond the storms, Winterfell waited. The North had remembered. Now perhaps it could begin to forget. He took one step into the snow, then another, vanishing into the white until only ghost remained. A pale shadow moving through a world reborn. And far away, in the quiet of dawn, Sansa Stark stood upon the walls of Winterfell and thought she saw a wolf running beneath the northern lights. The storms did not cease when Jon Snow vanished into the frozen sea. They rolled south, sweeping over the north with the fury of an ancient wrath. Snow fell for 10 days without pause, smothering fields, burying roads, and silencing even the forests. The world had turned white and still, as if the very air had forgotten the sound of men. In Winterfell, the fires burned night and day, though even the flames seemed pale beneath the stormlight. Lady Sansa Stark walked the walls wrapped in furs, her face drawn, her eyes fixed northward. She did not weep. She had forgotten how. It was Harold Reed who brought her the first whisper of hope. He found her in the courtyard, where she stood watching the snow settle on the statues of her ancestors. "My lady," he said, bowing his head. "A raven came at dawn, from the Crannogs. It carries no words, only a token." He held out a strip of dark cloth. Sansa took it, unrolling it with trembling fingers. It was a piece of black fur, stiff with frost, and beneath it was a small iron clasp, the shape of a wolf's head. "Ghost's fur," she murmured. "Aye," said Harold. "The raven came from the far north, beyond the sea." Sansa closed her eyes. "Then he lives." "Or he did," Harold said gently, long enough to send a sign. Sansa turned to him, her voice steady, though her hands shook. "Have the council assembled. The North has waited long enough in silence. If Jon Snow still walks, he will not face the end of the world alone." That night, the great hall filled once more with the sound of northern voices, deep and harsh and weary. The long tables were lined with men and women wrapped in thick cloaks, snow still melting from their boots. At the high seat, beneath the banner of the direwolf, Sansa stood. "The storms have not broken," she said, her voice carrying over the hall. "And the dead may yet walk in shadow, but the North endures. We have buried gods before. We can bury one more." Lord Manderley rose. "If this darkness truly began in the far north, then that is where it must end. But who will lead us there, my lady? Jon Snow was the sword of the North. He is gone." Sansa looked down at the fur in her hand, the faintest smile on her lips. "Then the sword has passed to the sheath. My brother once told me that every Stark must face winter alone before they can stand together again. He faced his alone. Now it is our turn." There were murmurs, surprise, disbelief, resolve. Sansa's gaze swept the hall. The North remembers, but memory is not mourning, it is duty. Outside, the wind screamed through the towers as though the world itself took up her call. Far away, beyond the sea of ice, a faint light stirred in the darkness. Jon Snow lay where the tide had left him, his body half buried in frost, his breath shallow but steady. Around him, the sea had frozen solid, stretching into infinity. The sky above burned with shifting green and blue lights, the aurora of the farthest north. He opened his eyes slowly. The world was silent save for the whisper of his own heartbeat. Ghost lay beside him, fur stiff with ice, but when Jon reached out, the direwolf's eyes opened, red, alive. "You're still here," Jon whispered. "Good." He pushed himself upright, his limbs stiff, his cloak frozen to the ground. The cold was no longer an enemy. It was part of him now, a quiet, steady rhythm in his veins. He looked around. In the distance, through the shimmering mist, a faint glow pulsed beneath the ice, red and steady, like a buried star, the heart of the north. He began to walk. Every step echoed like thunder in the silence. The light grew brighter as he neared, until at last he stood above a vast fissure in the ice. Beneath it, deep below, lay a cavern of black crystal. In its center beat a mass of red light, not fire, but something older, a living memory of all the blood the North had ever spilled. Jon knelt beside it, his breath clouding the air. "So this is what you wanted," he said softly. "All the wars, all the death, only to wake what should have stayed sleeping." A voice rose from the depths, low, familiar, and cold. "You cannot kill memory, Snow." Jon closed his eyes. "Euron." "No longer," said the voice. "I am every oath broken, every lie remembered, every ghost who ever whispered through your halls. You gave me form when you buried your dead and called it honor." The ice beneath Jon's feet cracked. From the fissure rose shapes, shadows draped in black, faces pale and shifting. He saw men he had known, the brothers of the Watch, the wildlings of Hardhome, even those he had slain. Their eyes glowed faintly, like coals beneath snow. "You made us," the voice said. "You carried us in your heart. Now we carry you." Jon drew Longclaw. The sword's edge shone silver in the dim light. "Then let us finish what we began." The shadows surged forward. He met them head-on, every stroke of his blade cutting through memory and mist. Faces he loved and hated struck at him, whispering his name, Robb, Ygritte, Daenerys. Their touch was colder than death, their words heavier than steel. "Why do you fight?" they whispered. "There is no victory here, only remembrance." Jon's voice was hoarse. "Then I fight to forget." He drove Longclaw into the heart of the light. The blade sank deep, and the cavern screamed, a sound not of pain but release. The shadows shuddered, their forms breaking apart, dissolving into mist. The light dimmed, flickered, and then went out. Jon fell to his knees, his sword buried in the ice. The silence that followed was perfect, endless. Ghost came to his side, pressing close. Jon laid a hand upon his head. "It's done," he whispered. "The North can rest." He looked up at the sky. The aurora had faded, leaving only starlight. A strange peace filled him. He did not know if he was alive or dead, only that the storm within him had gone still. He closed his eyes. When the snows broke weeks later, the sky over Winterfell cleared for the first time in memory. The wind grew quiet, and the air smelled of pine instead of ice. Sansa stood upon the battlements as the sun rose. Its light touched the towers, turning the stone gold. She felt warmth on her face, faint, fragile, but real. Harold Reed joined her. "The ice has melted as far as the neck," he said. "The rivers run free again." Sansa's eyes were on the horizon. "And the North? The people live," he said simply. She nodded. "Then he did it." Harold hesitated. "Will he return?" Sansa's smile was small and sad. "He already has." She looked out over the snows. Far to the north, where the sky met the mountains, a single white shape moved across the plain, a wolf, running swift and silent. No horn sounded, no banners flew, only the whisper of wind over the stone walls of Winterfell carried his memory. The lone wolf dies, she thought, but the pack survives. The snow began to fall again, gentle and light. Sansa turned and walked back toward the hall, her footsteps steady, her heart quiet at last. Behind her, the wind murmured softly through the towers, carrying the old words that would outlive them all. The North remembers. The thaw did not bring peace, it brought memory. As the snows melted and the rivers swelled, the North seemed to wake from a long and haunted dream. The frozen fields revealed bones, some ancient, some too fresh to name. Ravens returned to the skies, their cries carrying far across the plains, but they brought no tidings of Jon Snow. Lady Sansa Stark ruled from the seat of her ancestors, her face calm though her eyes grew ever colder. The people of the North hailed her as their queen in all but name, and she bore the title as her father might have borne a sword, without vanity, without joy, only purpose. Yet when the hall grew quiet at night and the fires burned low, she would turn her gaze northward and wonder what price her brother had paid to bring them dawn. Winterfell itself had changed. Where once the Godswood had stood, now there lay only blackened roots and frost. Yet strangely, new shoots had begun to rise among the ashes, pale as bone, veined faintly red. Some called it a blessing, others a curse. Sansa forbade the trees to be cut, saying only, "The old gods are not gone, they sleep lightly." In the great hall, the banners of the northern houses hung motionless. Lord Manderley of White Harbor, his great girth seeming smaller since the long winter, sat beside Lord Serwyn and Lady Dustin. They spoke of rebuilding, of trade returning from the south, of ships sighted beyond the Bight. "The Ironborn stir again," Manderley said darkly. "Their captains claim to have seen lights upon the sea, fires that burn green and red beneath the waves." "The Crow's Eye is dead," Lady Dustin muttered. "Let the drowned stay drowned." But Sansa felt a chill at the words. The Crow's Eye might be gone, but she knew too well that death did not always end a man's reach. She thought of Jon then, of his voice in the dark, his promise that the North would rest when he did. She wondered whether rest was something a Stark could ever claim. That night, she dreamed again. She stood upon the battlements of Winterfell, the snow melting into mist around her. The castle was empty, the fires out. A wolf howled somewhere beyond the walls, and when she turned, she saw Jon standing beneath the old weirwood, its face whole once more. "You kept your word," he said. She tried to reach him, but her feet sank into the snow. "Come home," she whispered. "I am home," he replied, and as he spoke, his form faded like breath upon glass, leaving only the tree behind him, its eyes open and watching. When she woke, she found the first pale leaves of a new heart tree unfurled in the Godswood. Far beyond the wall, the world was changed. Where the sea had frozen once, there now lay vast plains of ice, cracked and glittering beneath a dim sun. In that stillness moved a single shadow, black against the white. Jon Snow walked through the endless north, the cold no longer biting, the hunger no longer sharp. Ghost padded beside him, his paws silent, his fur dusted with frost. The direwolf's breath no longer steamed in the air, and Jon wondered if they still breathed at all. He did not know how long he had walked, days, weeks, perhaps years. The sun never set, only dimmed and brightened in an endless cycle. The land bore no sound but the wind, and even that was softer now, as though the world feared to wake itself. At last, he came to a valley where the snow gave way to black ice, smooth as glass. Beneath it, something glowed. A faint pulse of light, red and steady, like the ember of a dying fire. He knelt, pressing his hand to the surface. It was warm. Still burning, he murmured. From the shadows behind him came a voice. Not burning, waiting. Jon rose, hand on Longclaw. The figure that emerged was cloaked in white, its face hidden beneath a hood. Yet he knew the voice. "Benjen," he breathed. His uncle stepped into the dim light, his eyes the same pale blue as the ice. "You've come far, Jon. I thought you were lost." "In a way, I am," Benjen said. "There are places men go where time forgets them. I walk among them now." Jon sheathed his sword slowly. "If you've come to stop me, you're too late." Benjen smiled faintly. "Stop you? No. You've already done what needed doing. The heart sleeps again. But the world is not so simple as ending one evil. The North remembers, and memory is a heavy thing." Jon frowned. "Then why am I still here?" "To carry what remains," Benjen said. He stepped closer, and Jon saw that his body was more shadow than flesh, his movements like smoke and wind. "You were meant to be a bridge, Jon Snow, between life and what lies beyond, between fire and ice. The world still needs you." Jon's hand tightened on Longclaw. "I am no god." "No," his uncle said softly, "but you are a Stark, and that will do." The wind rose then, lifting the snow in swirling shapes around them. When it settled, Benjen was gone. Only his voice lingered. "Go south. The pack awaits." Jon stood alone again, his breath steady. He looked to Ghost, who met his gaze without sound. "Come on then," Jon said quietly. "Let's go home." They turned south toward a horizon that glowed faintly gold. In Winterfell, spring came slow and shy. The rivers ran high with meltwater, and the air smelled of thawed earth. Children played in the courtyards again, their laughter strange after the long quiet of winter. Sansa walked the ramparts at dusk, the wind warm against her cheeks. Below, the new heart tree swayed gently, its pale leaves catching the light of the setting sun. "Your brother would be proud," Harold said beside her. "He always wanted peace," she said. "Now we may have it." "Do you believe he lives?" She hesitated. "I believe the North does." At that moment, a horn sounded from the outer gate. 3 low notes, drawn and clear. A rider approached across the plain, his horse gray with frost, a great white shape pacing beside it. Sansa's breath caught. She knew that wolf, and the man who rode with him. When the gates opened, Jon Snow entered Winterfell once more. His face was thinner, his hair streaked with white, but his eyes were the same, calm, steady, filled with the weight of all he had seen. Ghost moved beside him, silent as ever, his red eyes burning with quiet fire. The people of Winterfell gathered in the yard. None spoke. Some wept. Sansa stepped forward. For a long moment, neither said a word. Then she smiled, a faint, tremulous smile. "You came home?" she said. Jon looked up at the towers, at the walls, at the heart tree swaying in the godswood beyond. "Aye," he said softly, "but it's not the same." "No," she agreed, "and neither are we." He nodded once. "Good." That night, the great hall blazed with fire and song. The lords of the North toasted the return of the White Wolf, and laughter echoed from the old stone once more. But Jon sat quietly beside his sister, his eyes distant. Later, when the hall was empty, he went alone to the godswood. The heart tree's pale leaves rustled as he knelt before it. "Father," he whispered, "the North remembers." A single leaf drifted down, red as blood, and came to rest upon his hand. Far above, the stars burned cold and clear, and in their light, Winterfell seemed alive again. The wolf had come home, and for the first time in many years, the North slept in peace. The days that followed Jon Snow's return were strange and quiet. Spring crept timidly into the north, its breath thin and pale, and though the snows still fell by night, the morning sun melted them by degrees. For the first time in many years, Winterfell's courtyards echoed with laughter, and the great halls smelled not of ash and blood, but of baking bread and smoke from bright fires. Yet beneath the peace, something restless stirred. The ravens brought tidings from the south, a new queen in King's Landing, old banners raised again in the Reach, and whispers of dragons far across the narrow sea. But Sansa paid them no mind. The North was hers now, and it would remain free, come what may. Jon spoke little in those early days. He rode the lands each dawn, patrolling the forests and rivers, as though seeking some trace of the war that would not leave him. The small folk called him the White Wolf of Winterfell, a ghost of legend walking among the living. To Sansa, he was still her brother, but there was a shadow in him that had not been there before. One evening, as the sky burned orange over the fields, she found him in the Godswood. He knelt before the heart tree, its pale leaves swaying in the gentle wind. "You've worn a path in the grass," she said softly. Jon rose, brushing snow from his cloak. Old habits die hard. "You're not a ranger anymore," she said. "You don't need to guard ghosts." Jon looked up at the red eyes of the weirwood. "Don't I? There's something still stirring beyond the ice. I feel it." Sansa sighed. "The war is over, Jon. Whatever haunted us is gone." Jon turned to her, his face calm, though his eyes were weary. "Wars end. The North doesn't forget." She stepped closer. "Then let it remember peace." He smiled faintly, a small, broken thing. "You sound like Father." "And you," she said, "sound like him too." For a moment, the air between them was warm with memory. Then Ghost's low growl broke the stillness. The direwolf stood near the tree line, his red eyes fixed northward. Jon stiffened. "He smells something." Sansa frowned. "There's nothing there." But when Jon turned, he saw it, a figure at the edge of the trees, half hidden in the dusk. It stood motionless, wrapped in rags of black. Jon's hand went to Longclaw. "Stay here." He moved forward slowly, Ghost padding at his side. The figure did not flee. When Jon came near enough to see its face, his breath caught. It was a man, or what remained of one. His skin was pale and stretched, his eyes colorless. A black cloak hung from his shoulders, tattered and stiff with frost. "You," Jon whispered. "You were at the wall." The man's lips parted, voice rasping like wind over stone. "Lord Commander." Jon's heart pounded. "You're dead." The thing smiled faintly. "We all are." Before Jon could speak again, the man's body crumbled like snow in sunlight, scattering on the wind. In the silence that followed, only Ghost's growl remained. When Jon turned back, Sansa was standing behind him, her face pale. "What was it?" she asked. "An echo," Jon said quietly, "of what once was." "Is it coming back?" Jon looked toward the darkening forest. "No, it never left." That night the wind rose again, cold and sharp. The fire in the great hall guttered, as if caught in a breath too vast to name. Sansa watched the flames flicker and thought of the days when the North had burned. She had built her peace with her own hands. She would not see it stolen by ghosts. But in the small hours, she dreamed. She stood upon the battlements, the stars wheeling above her. The world was silent. Then a shadow passed over the moon. vast, winged, and terrible. When it landed in the courtyard below, its scales gleamed black as pitch. Its eyes burned with red fire, and from its mouth poured not flame, but snow. Upon its back sat a man cloaked in white. His face was pale as the beast he rode, and his hair streamed like frost. When he looked up, she saw that it was Jon. "Why do you bring this?" she cried. "Because it comes for us," he said, "because it never died." She woke with a start, her heart pounding. Outside, the storm had returned. By dawn, the castle was buried again in snow. The walls groaned under its weight, and the stables filled with frightened horses. Jon stood upon the ramparts, his cloak snapping in the wind. Ghost sat beside him, silent, his eyes bright against the white. Harold Reed joined him. "The scouts report strange lights near the ruins of Last Hearth," he said. "Green and red, moving like fire but leaving no smoke." Jon nodded. "Send word to the lords. We ride by nightfall." Sansa appeared behind them, her face set. "You ride south, and the north loses its lord. I won't allow it." Jon turned, his expression unreadable. "If we stay, it will come to us instead." "Then let it," she said fiercely. "Winterfell has stood 1,000 years. It can stand another storm." "This isn't a storm," Jon said. "It's memory, and memory always finds its way home." For a moment, they stared at one another, brother and sister, both carved from the same hard stone. Then Sansa stepped back, her voice low. "Go then, but if you do not return, the North will remember you as it remembers father, and hold fast." Jon inclined his head. "That's all I could ask." The company rode out at dusk, 24 riders, their torches like small stars in the gathering dark. The snow swallowed their sound, the forest rising black and endless around them. By midnight, they reached Last Hearth. What they found there froze even Jon's heart. The ruins stood empty, yet upon the ground burned strange symbols carved into the snow, spirals of light that glowed faintly red. Within their pattern lay the remains of a great beast, half dragon, half wolf, its body made of ice and ash. "It's begun again," Harold whispered. Jon dismounted, walking slowly to the center of the ruin. He knelt, brushing snow from the markings. Beneath the ice was not blood, but water, dark, still, deep. He could see his reflection in it, and behind him, another shape, tall and shifting. A voice rose from the water. "Did you think to escape me, Snow?" Jon's hand tightened on Longclaw. "You're dead." "Am I?" the voice hissed. "The sea remembers. The snow remembers. And soon they will remember me." The water rippled. A shadow rose from it, faint, formless, yet vast. Jon struck with Longclaw, the blade flashing silver. The light of it filled the ruins, driving the darkness back for a heartbeat. Then it was gone. Jon stood alone, the snow falling softly around him. He turned to his men. "Tell Lady Sansa to prepare Winterfell. The North will need her strength again." "And you, my lord?" Harold asked. Jon looked to the dark horizon. "I'll follow where the storm goes." By dawn, he was gone once more, riding into the white. And at Winterfell, as Sansa stood upon the walls watching the snow return, she thought she saw him far to the north, a lone rider beneath a sky of fire and frost, a wolf at his side. She closed her eyes and whispered the words that had become her prayer, her curse, her crown. The North had known winters that lasted a lifetime, but none like this. The snows no longer fell softly. They came like waves upon a shore, endless and heavy, burying the world beneath them. Men whispered that it was not weather, but penance, the sky mourning for what had been lost. In Winterfell, the fires burned higher with each passing night. The great hall had become both hearth and fortress. Its walls hung with furs to hold the warmth. Yet even fire could not banish the cold that seemed to seep from the stones themselves. Sansa Stark moved through her home like a shadow, her thoughts a storm that would not still. The raven from the Frostfangs had come 3 days past, bearing a message written in her brother's hand. It stirs beneath the ice again. Hold fast. No more than that. No sign of where he had gone, nor if he lived still. Only the warning, a promise, and a plea. The lords of the north were gathered again beneath Winterfell's roof. Lord Manderley sat hunched like a mountain in furs. Beside him, Lady Barbary Dustin and the young Lord Serwyn whispered in uneasy tones. At the high seat stood Sansa, her crimson cloak falling in heavy folds about her. "The storm grows stronger to the east," said Serwyn. "My riders vanished beyond the long lake. The land itself is changing, the snow hard as glass, the rivers running black." Lady Dustin's voice was thin and sharp. "The dead will walk again before this is done. The north is cursed. We should abandon Winterfell, sail south." "The north does not run," Sansa said, her voice like drawn steel. "This castle was built to withstand worse than ghosts." "Ghosts can pass through walls," Manderley rumbled. "Steel cannot stop what has no flesh." Sansa's gaze flicked toward him. "Then we'll use something older than steel." That night she went to the Godswood. The snow there was deep, but the new heart tree still stood, its pale leaves trembling though there was no wind. The air smelled of sap and cold stone. She knelt before it and spoke softly, as her father once had. "Jon fights for us," she whispered. "But if he fails, if he falls again, give me the strength to do what he cannot." A drop of red sap fell from the bark, landing in the snow like blood upon a shroud. She took it as her answer. Far north, Jon Snow pressed onward through a land that was no longer land at all. The ice beneath his horse's hooves shone black and smooth, stretching into forever. No trees grew here. No beasts stirred. The only sound was the groan of shifting ice and the slow beat of his own heart. Ghost ranged ahead, a pale wraith against the dark. His red eyes flashed in the dimness, and now and then he would vanish into the storm and return silent as breath. Jon rode until the horizon bled red. Ahead, rising from the ice like a wound, he saw it. A rift, wide and deep, glowing faintly from within. He dismounted, leaving the horse behind. The air here pulsed, warm though no fire burned. When he peered into the chasm, he saw water far below, dark and restless. Upon it floated shards of ice that glowed with strange light, and upon those shards, shadows moved, shapes that were neither man nor beast. He heard them whisper, "Snow." The voice came from everywhere, soft as falling flakes. "Snow, do you remember us?" Jon's fingers tightened around Longclaw's hilt. "I remember enough." The whispers grew louder, weaving together into something like laughter. "You killed us. You saved us. You carried us all in your blood. You think you can bury what you are?" Jon closed his eyes. "I am no god. I'm done with prophecy and ghosts. Then why are you still alive?" The question struck deeper than any blade. For a moment, he saw faces in the water, Robb, Bran, Ygritte, Daenerys, all looking up at him with eyes full of fire. He whispered, "Because someone must be." The ice beneath his feet cracked, and he leapt aside as a hand thrust up from the chasm, white, clawed, dripping seawater that steamed in the cold. Then another. From the depths rose a figure of ice and salt, armored in black scales, its single eye burning crimson. "Crow's eye," Jon breathed. The thing laughed, though its mouth did not move. Names are small things. I am the storm you left unfinished. Jon raised Longclaw, then let it end now. They clashed. Steel met ice in flashes of white. Each strike echoed like thunder across the frozen sea. The creature fought with inhuman strength, its blows shattering the ground. Ghost leapt upon it, tearing at its arm, and the monster flung him aside like snow. Jon drove forward, every motion born of desperation. You're nothing but memory. Memory is forever, the voice boomed. The sea remembers, the north remembers, and through you, I live. It struck him hard, sending him sprawling. His sword skittered across the ice. For a heartbeat, he lay still, breathless, staring at the faint light above. Then he heard another voice, quiet, clear, unmistakable. Sansa. It was not in his ears, but in his mind, the echo of her prayer. Give me the strength to do what he cannot. Jon rose. He reached for Longclaw, its hilt warm in his grasp. The runes on the blade glowed faintly, as if remembering fire. He charged. The crow's eye swung, but Jon did not parry. He drove forward, through the blow, through the pain, through the shadow. Longclaw plunged into the creature's chest, and light burst outward, red, white, gold. The ice cracked, the sea roared, the light swallowed everything. At Winterfell, Sansa woke to thunder. The storm had broken. Snow and rain fell together, washing the soot from the castle walls. The wind carried the scent of pine and thawed earth. She rose from her bed and went to the window. Far off, the horizon flared with strange light, bright and fading, like dawn seen through tears. Harold Reed found her in the courtyard, staring north. "What is it?" he asked. She smiled faintly. "The storm has ended." "And Jon?" She looked at the horizon one last time. "He'll come home. He always does." Days later, as the sun set over the melting fields, a lone rider appeared at the edge of the woods. A great white wolf walked beside him, its fur shining in the light. When they reached the gate, the guards fell silent. Jon dismounted, his cloak heavy with frost, his face worn but alive. His eyes were distant, not empty, but full of something beyond words. Sansa met him in the yard. Neither spoke. She stepped forward and placed her hand on his cheek. He caught her wrist and held it for a heartbeat, then bowed his head. "It's done," he said softly. "I know." They stood together as the wind eased around them, carrying with it the scent of spring. The snow melted from the stones, revealing the gray of Winterfell beneath. Later, when the fires burned low, Jon went to the Godswood. The heart tree had grown taller, its leaves deepening to red. He knelt before it and laid Longclaw in the earth. "No more wars," he whispered. "No more ghosts." The leaves stirred, though no breeze passed. A single one drifted down, landing on his hand. When he looked up, the face carved in the tree seemed softer somehow. Its mouth curved in something like peace. Jon smiled. Above, the stars burned bright, and far away, beyond ice and sea, the north breathed again. The snow fell soft that spring, as if the heavens themselves sought forgiveness for all they had wrought. The fields beyond Winterfell glistened beneath a thin veil of frost, and the air smelled of wet earth and new beginnings. For the first time in many long years, the sound of hammers and laughter carried over the walls once more. Lady Sansa Stark stood upon the battlements, wrapped in a cloak of gray fur, her hair caught by the wind. The years of war and winter had etched their mark upon her face, but her eyes, clear and steady as the northern sky, shone with quiet strength. She watched as the people of Winterfell rebuilt their lives. Farmers mending fences, blacksmiths at their forges, children chasing each other through the melting snow. Peace, fragile though it was, had come at last. Jon Snow had returned, though what had come back from the north was not quite the same man who had once left. He spoke little of what he had seen beyond the ice, and when pressed, his eyes grew distant, as though he were listening to voices only he could hear. Yet he smiled sometimes, faintly, when Ghost lay at his feet by the hearth, or when Sansa scolded him for walking the ramparts at midnight as if he still served the watch. "He doesn't sleep," the guards whispered. "The White Wolf never sleeps." They were not wrong. Each night Jon wandered the quiet halls, the weight of memory heavy upon him. The echoes of the past clung to the stones, laughter, tears, blood, and though the war was done, he could not shake the feeling that the North itself still breathed through him. The Godswood had grown anew, and its heart tree now stretched proud and strong, its bark pale as moonlight, its leaves a deep crimson. Jon visited it often, kneeling in silence as Ghost prowled the perimeter. It was there that Sansa found him one evening, as the last light faded. "You'll catch your death out here," she said. Jon looked up, his breath rising in the chill air. "Death and I are well acquainted." Sansa sighed, coming to stand beside him. "And yet you keep meeting him halfway." He smiled faintly. Someone must keep him company. For a while they stood together, the only sound the whisper of the weirwood leaves. Then Sansa said softly, "You could have stayed south. The realm might have followed you." "I've had enough of crowns," Jon said. "They're heavier than any chain. The North is all I ever wanted, to see it live." "And it does," she said, "because of you." Jon's gaze lingered on the tree. "Because of all of us. Father, Robb, Mother, Bran, even the ones we've lost. They're still here in the roots." Sansa's hand brushed his sleeve. "Then let them rest, Jon. The living must remember how to live." He turned to her then, his expression soft. "And you? Have you?" Her eyes met his. "I'm learning." They stayed there until the moon rose, painting the world in silver. The days grew longer. Ravens came from White Harbor and the Vale, bearing tidings of peace. The lords of the North bent the knee to Lady Sansa, though she refused the title of queen. "The North needs no crown," she said, "only honor." Jon kept mostly to the wildlands beyond Winterfell, riding with the free folk who had settled in the far reaches. He brought back tales of forests regrown, of rivers thawing, and of strange lights beneath the sea where the ice had once stretched. When Sansa asked him about the lights, he only said, "The North dreams still, but they're gentler dreams now." On the longest night of that first spring, Winterfell held a feast. The great hall blazed with torches and laughter, the walls echoing with song. Jon sat beside Sansa at the high table, drinking little but smiling more than he had in years. Tormund Giantsbane told wild tales of giants and ice bears. Lady Barbary scowled and declared she'd seen worse. Harold Reed sang a song of the neck, his voice thin but true. Even dour Lord Manderley joined the chorus before long. For a time, it felt as though the world had forgotten grief. When the hall emptied and the fires burned low, Jon lingered alone. The echoes of laughter faded, leaving only the crackle of embers. He stood, took his cloak, and stepped out into the cold. The Godswood waited. The snow fell gently among the red leaves, settling on Ghost's fur as he followed his master to the heart tree. Jon knelt before it once more, tracing the bark with his gloved hand. The carved face seemed to watch him, its eyes red as embers in the dark. "I've done all I can," he murmured. "But still I wonder, was it enough?" The wind moved through the branches like a sigh. Jon closed his eyes. In the hush of the Godswood, he heard it, faint at first, then clearer, the sound of distant voices, not the cruel whispers of the dead he had fought, but the familiar murmur of kin. His father's deep voice, his mother's soft laughter, Arya's wild shout echoing down some remembered corridor, and beneath it all, a whisper. His own name, spoken in warmth, not warning. Home, it said. He felt something ease within him then, a weight that had been his since the wall first called him brother. He rose, laying a hand upon the tree one last time. "Keep them safe," he said softly. "All of them." The wind stirred once more, rustling through the leaves as if in promise. When he turned to go, Ghost padded close beside him. Together they walked through the snow toward the gate, the castle rising tall and dark behind them. He did not know where the road would lead, north perhaps, or beyond, but for the first time in many years, it did not matter. The north would endure. It always had. By the next dawn, the rider and his wolf were gone. Some said Jon had gone to live among the free folk, others that he wandered the frozen shore, where the world met the sea. A few swore they saw him far to the north, standing upon a ridge as the morning light broke over the ice, Ghost beside him, both still as statues carved from snow. Sansa never sought to prove the tales true or false. She ruled in peace, and the north prospered. The harvests returned, the rivers ran strong, and the people began to sing again. Old songs, with new verses added for the wars they'd survived, and the wolves who had saved them. In the Godswood, the heart tree flourished, its roots deep and sure. Each spring it shed crimson leaves that drifted across the courtyard like a rain of blood and memory. And when the wind rose at dusk, whispering through the towers and over the walls, the people would pause to listen. Some swore they heard a voice within the wind, low and distant, carried from beyond the snows. A man's voice, steady as the winter and kind as the dawn. The north remembers, and it did, not with sorrow, but with pride and with love that even death could not still. For though winters may break the land and kings may fall to ruin, the wolves of the north endure. Their howls echo through the ages, a song of home, of honor, and of the cold, unyielding truth that binds all who bear their name. The pack survives,